There is a name Jesus spoke in private, a name so powerful that when he breathed it over broken bodies, they became whole. This name was not Holy Spirit. That is a translation, a flattened echo of something far more alive. In his original Aramaic tongue, Jesus called this divine presence by a name that contains both breath and fire in a single sound. That name is RUKHA de QUDSHA. And the moment you understand what those two words truly mean together, the way you pray, breathe, and move through this world will never be the same. RUKHA is the wind that cannot be stopped, the same force that moved across the waters before creation began. QUDSHA is not a moral quality. It is a blazing, consecrated light that sets souls ablaze from the inside. When Jesus promised his disciples that RUKHA de QUDSHA would dwell within them, he was not describing a ceremony. He was describing an internal ignition that your body was literally designed to receive. The Church translated this name, but translation was never the same as transmission. What was lost in that moment is exactly what you are about to recover today. When the Council of Nicaea began standardizing Christian doctrine in 325 AD, the living Aramaic teachings of Jesus were already being filtered through Greek philosophy. The translation process was not simply linguistic, it was theological, political, and deeply selective. Words that carried experiential frequency were converted into abstract doctrine, and no words suffered this loss more profoundly than RUKHA. The original Aramaic word RUKHA is rooted in the experience of breath and wind, forces that are invisible yet undeniably real and physically felt. Ancient Aramaic speakers did not separate the spiritual from the physical, the way Western civilization later would. When Jesus said RUKHA, his listeners felt it in their lungs, in the air around them, in the movement of the trees. It was not metaphor. It was description. QUDSHA derives from the root, meaning to be set apart, not in the sense of distance, but in the sense of intensity. A fire that burns with unusual brilliance is kadosh. A source of light that does not dim is kadosh. When Jesus joined RUKHA to QUDSHA, he was speaking about a breath of extraordinary, undimming intensity, something that, once it enters a person, changes the quality of everything inside them. The Greek translators chose pneuma hagion, which preserved a faint echo of the original, but as centuries passed and the text migrated into Latin and then English, what remained was a title, Holy Spirit, stripped of its sensory instruction and reduced to a concept sitting quietly inside a creed. The tragedy is not that the word was translated. The tragedy is that generations of people have been taught to pray toward a concept rather than practice a living frequency. Jesus never intended his teachings to be believed from a distance. He intended them to be breathed, activated, inhabited from within. That activation begins with speaking the name correctly. RUKHA, DSH. Understanding these frequencies is the first step, but mastering their vibration in your daily life is where the true miracle happens. I receive many messages asking for the correct pronunciation and sequence of these sounds, so I have prepared 2 sacred guides to help you bridge this gap. You can find the link pinned in the comments to begin your practical journey today. There is a moment described in the Gospel of John where Jesus, after his resurrection, stood among his disciples, breathed on them, and said, "Receive the RUKHA de QUDSHA." This act was not symbolic. In the Aramaic understanding of reality, the breath of a teacher carried the actual vibrational imprint of their consciousness. When Jesus breathed, he was not performing a ritual. He was transmitting a frequency directly into their nervous systems. This is why RUKHA breath and wind was the correct vehicle. You cannot separate breath from life in any language. But in Aramaic, breath is the mechanism through which the divine enters the human. Every inhalation is a receipt. Every exhalation is an offering. Jesus was teaching his disciples that this exchange between the human being and the living RUKHA was not a once-in-history event. It was a practice. It was designed to happen continuously in the ordinary texture of each day. What does QUDSHA actually do once it is consciously received? Ancient Aramaic teachers describe three primary activations. The first is clarity, a sudden, unmistakable dissolving of mental fog and confusion. The second is courage, not the emotional surge that fades, but a settled, deep-rooted certainty that does not depend on circumstances. The third is fire, what the Aramaic tradition calls the inner flame of QUDSHA, which burns away fear, shame, and the accumulated weight of old wounds. Jesus described the QUDSHA as a teacher who would lead you into all truth. In Aramaic, truth is QUSHTA, not an abstract proposition, but a living alignment with the real nature of things. The QUDSHA is the internal compass that reorients you whenever you drift from that alignment. It does not lecture. It does not condemn. It breathes you back toward your original design. If this teaching is stirring a deep resonance in your heart, it is a sign that your soul is ready to return to its original blueprint. To support you in this transition, my guides explain the layers of meaning behind the first sacred words, offering you a path to clear the interference of the world. The link to access these tools is waiting for you in the pinned comment. Ancient Aramaic texts preserved outside the canonical Bible, particularly the writings attributed to the Essene community near the Dead Sea, describe the QUDSHA not as a single event, but as a doorway system. Jesus, according to these preserved teachings, understood the human being as a threefold entity: body, soul, and spirit. Each of these dimensions has a corresponding door through which the QUDSHA must pass before full activation can occur. The first door is the door of the body. This is why Jesus so consistently used breath RUKHA as his primary transmission vehicle. The lungs are the physical entry point of the divine. Ancient Aramaic practitioners taught that intentional breathing, done while vocalizing QUDSHA, shifts the biochemistry of the human nervous system. Modern science confirms that slow, intentional breath activates the parasympathetic nervous system and creates within the body what ancient teachers called reset. The second door is the door of the soul. In Aramaic, the soul nafsia is the seat of emotion, memory, and relational intelligence. Many people carry wounds in the nafsha that function like interference patterns, preventing them from receiving the full current of QUDSHA. Jesus addressed this directly when he spoke about forgiveness, not as a moral obligation, but as a practical act of clearing the door. SHBAQ, the Aramaic word for forgiveness, means to let go, to untie, to release back to the universe. When the nafsha is cleared through SHBAQ, the second door swings open. The third door is the door of the spirit, and this is the dimension that QUDSHA most directly in. This is the domain of pure knowing, what Jesus described as the witness within you that testifies to truth. When all three doors are open, the teaching of Jesus says, a person becomes a vessel of unbroken light. There are no shortcuts to this opening. But there is a sequence, and that sequence is exactly what Jesus demonstrated and what the church quietly set aside. What separates the teaching of Jesus from religion is that he never intended his words to remain as ideas. Every instruction he gave was a practice, something done with the body, the breath, the voice, and the full attention. The reception of RUKHA de QUDSHA is no different. It was never meant to be waited for passively. It was designed to be actively invited. Jesus demonstrated this in John 20 by breathing on his disciples before speaking the words. The sequence is important. First came the breath. Then came the name. This order is not accidental. In Aramaic teaching, the body must be prepared before the word is released, because the word, when spoken with full breath behind it, travels not just as sound but as living transmission. The practice begins with stillness. Find a place of silence and sit with your spine upright, not rigid, but aligned. This alignment matters because the Aramaic tradition understood the spine as the central channel through which divine breath flows between earth and heaven. Take 3 slow, deep breaths, releasing each one completely before drawing the next. With each exhale, let go of one layer of the day's accumulation, its noise, its demands, its tensions. On the 4th breath, as you inhale fully, silently speak the first word, RUKHA. Feel its meaning as you breathe it in wind. Breath, the invisible force of creation entering your body. As you hold for a brief moment, add the second element, QUDSHA. Let the blazing consecrated light permeate what the breath has opened. Then exhale slowly and completely, holding everything you have received. Jesus taught that the RUKHA de QUDSHA does not force entry. It responds to invitation. And that invitation, in its purest form, is a human being who has become still enough to receive. Do this practice for 7 consecutive mornings and observe what changes in your inner landscape. One of the most disorienting aspects of modern spiritual practice is that people have been trained to describe encounters with the divine in exclusively emotional terms: tears, warmth, a sense of peace. While these experiences are real, they are only the surface layer of what RUKHA de QUDSHA produces in a fully opened human being. Jesus described its effects in far more concrete terms, and those terms were preserved most accurately in the Aramaic tradition. The first sign is what ancient Aramaic teachers called Hamanutha, a deep, settled trust that is not manufactured by the mind. It is not forced positivity. It is natope, which always contains a residue of doubt. Hamanutha is the quiet certainty of a person who has been breathed on by truth itself. When RUKHA de QUDSHA is actively flowing, circumstances lose their grip. What once triggered anxiety begins to seem transparent, seen through rather than reacted to. The second sign is an increase in what Jesus called discernment, the ability to sense the quality of a situation, a person, or a decision before the analytical mind has assembled its arguments. In Aramaic, this is related to the word neuro, inner light. The RUKHA de QUDSHA sharpens neuro, and people around you begin to notice. They will say you seem clearer, calmer, somehow more present than before. This is not personality, it is activation. The third sign may surprise you. It is creative power. When Jesus said his followers would do greater works than he did, he was not describing miracles as violations of natural law. He was describing what happens when a human being fully aligned with RUKHA de QUDSHA begins to act in the world. Ideas arrive with unusual clarity. Solutions present themselves without effort. Relationships that were stuck begin to move. Everything you have received in this teaching points toward one inescapable truth, that Jesus did not come to establish a religion. He came to restore a connection. The name RUKHA de QUDSHA is not a theological term to be debated. It is a living frequency to be received, practiced, and inhabited every single day of your life. The ancient Aramaic speakers who walked with Jesus did not separate their spirituality from their breathing, their work, their relationships, or their rest. Every dimension of life was understood as a potential channel for the RUKHA QUDSHA, the blazing, consecrated breath that moves through open human beings and leaves everything it touches transformed. What religion gave you was a symbol of this fire. What Jesus originally offered was the fire itself, and the difference between a symbol and the actual thing it represents is the difference between reading about water and drinking it. Today, you have begun drinking. The practice you received in this session, the breath, the sequence, the 7 mornings, is not a technique. It is an act of remembrance. You are remembering a capacity that was always yours, always present, always waiting for you to stop dismissing it as something reserved for saints and prophets. Jesus was very clear on this point. The RUKHA de QUDSHA would be given to all who ask, not all who deserve, not all who have achieved sufficient purity. All wo ask. So ask, breathe, receive, and let the consecrated wind of RUKHA de QUDSHA do what it was always designed to do. Restore you to the fullness of who you actually are. Visit Divine Light Academy at the link below to access my complete guides and start your journey into the living language of the Masters. But before you go, I want to hear from you. What did you feel during this session? Comment the word restoration below. If you felt a shift in your energy today, we read every response, and your testimony strengthens this entire community of light. Visit Divine Light Academy at the link below to access my complete guides and start your journey into the living language of the Masters. But before you go, I want to hear from you. What did you feel during this session? Comment the word restoration below. If you felt a shift in your energy today, we read every response, and your testimony strengthens this entire community of light. Right now, before you close this video, come to the comments and tell us, what did you feel? What shifted? We read every single response. And if this teaching found you today, subscribe to this channel. Every week, we go deeper into the ancient frequency codes that were always meant to be yours. We are just scratching the surface of this ancient power. Get ready, because in our next video, I will reveal even deeper Aramaic codes that unlock spiritual authority you've never imagined. Make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on so you don't miss this unfolding revelation.